This recording is going to be pretty short, but I record when I can, so even if I have a short amount of time, I'll record during doing it. Last recording's experiment where I changed the OBS settings to be 60 FPS and to not downsample. I don't know if it's a placebo effect or not, but it did seem to make the game look smoother on recording. Again, it might be... I was messing with the volume, that's why I died there. It might be a placebo effect, I don't know. I don't have the most discriminating eyes there are. But it looked better to me, so I'm going to keep doing it. It also didn't make the file size incredibly huge. So, that's good. Now, I, re-listened to the audio from part 6. This is part 7, I believe. And there's a few times where I made statements that were like, I have to remember how to do this part now. Anyway, I'll talk about this later. And I never actually talk about it later. Which is my bad. I was just really scrambled and just kind of saying things off the cuff randomly and was completely disorganized. I don't prep for these things, and so I just was saying things like, I'll talk about this later. First thing had something to do with how Bionicle pieces were different than other Lego pieces. And I'm just going to say stuff like how, the Metru legs, they look distinctively like legs. They had a very distinct legness to them. And so it'd be difficult to use those pieces as things besides legs. Have been done in combiner models, but they had distinctly seemed to be made to be used for legs, right? The Mata torso was used to be a torso. That's pretty much always used as a torso. Even in Takuta, it was a torso, even though it was embedded within a bunch of other pieces in that torso. That's all I was going to say about that. Nothing special. Okay, they're supposed to do something like that or something. Yeah, I don't remember how to do this room. There's a pattern to it. I just gotta get the pattern back down. I was also going to say something about large tone holes or something later. Basically, what I was going to say is that large tone holes have a tendency to make an instrument less mechanically reliable because they're more difficult. It's more difficult for them to, over time, remain a ability to have a tight seal. Large tone holes require large pads, and pads that are more sensitive to change in the angle that the mechanics hold them at. So if you have something like a saxophone with large tone holes, it's going to develop leaks more readily and more larger leaks than something like a clarinet, which has smaller tone holes. Or something like a bassoon, which has smaller tone holes. So that's a big disadvantage of large tone holes. And something that I worry about a lot when I look at the design of the Contraforte, I go, those tone holes are very large. That would mean that this instrument have a tendency, like when the keys are less in alignment, will create bigger leaks. Which will negatively affect the tone more so than it would in a conventional contrabassoon. So that was all I was going to say there. Don't really want to bring up that whole Helryx thing up again too much because that was a drama thing, and drama stuff isn't good. It's not good to gossip. But just to try to clean some of that up, story of how that went is, TTV made a Twitter poll asking people if they thought that there should be Bionicle Cannon contests or not they felt that was a good idea. And I don't have a Twitter, so I didn't really vote in it. And I didn't really pay too much mind to it. It's like, if they want to do cannon contests, they can do cannon contests. That's their thing. I don't really have an opinion. That's fine. And so I didn't really pay much mind to it when they announced that the cannon contests were going to happen. I was like, didn't put any thought to, okay. I didn't think I was good enough of MOCs to enter anything. I was just like, okay, that's happening, whatever. I didn't ever think about it. Until then they announced that the polls were live. And then I was bored that afternoon. And, well, I don't know if I was bored or not. I just wanted to take a break from whatever I was doing. And so I just decided to go that was before they decided to make it so that you have to log in to the message boards to see the polls. I don't have a TTV message boards account and probably won't ever. So I could just, at that time, you could just look at the polls without logging in. So I just kind of looked down to see what MOCs were there, just for fun, and just for kicks. And I didn't, like, the Helryx entry, I didn't really notice it. Like, I just kind of scrolled past and go, oh, that looks like crap, and then just kept scrolling. I didn't really get the hoopla about it. I wasn't, like, indoctrinated into that. It wasn't until reading replies to the poll that I noticed it, because people were talking about it in the replies. I would have noticed it otherwise. So I don't know how it got that much attention draw, but it somehow did. And another thing I noticed was the rules that LJMS came up with involved pre-screenings. They came up with this. They went into the story serials and they found a description in there of Helryx, which was that she was disturbingly frail, had something that resembled armor, and was blue, basically. And then they decide to pre-screen entries on whether or not they say they were blue and had armor. I don't know if they really did anything about the frail thing. That was kind of, not really. They weren't very strict about making sure the entry was frail looking, but they did say it had to be blue and had to have armor. Which to me was somewhat of a weird practice because it wasn't something I was expecting at all, not something I would do, because I would think, well, there's a vote, right? So if a Helryx entry looks like something that the Bionicle fandom doesn't think Helryx should look like, then it just won't win the vote. So if you make a big red dragon and enter it into the Helryx contest, you could do that. It's just no one would, because no one would think that if they did, it would win, right? So just not something you'd ever have to worry about. And even if someone did, they wouldn't win because no one would vote for it, right? Because it wouldn't look like how they would think Helryx should look like. So pre-screening is something I never thought would ever be a thing, and it's something I'm always wary of, because now the specific group of people who have the authority to pre-screen, the moderators and the hosts that do this, they have now a special kind of power that the rest of the members do not have. So maybe in the future there could be an entry that's very popular but can't even be entered because it gets pre-screened out, for example. So the pre-screening gives certain specific privileged individuals extra power, which is not something I'm a fan of. So I'm too libertarian for that. Anyway, so that kind of left a little bad taste in my mouth, but not that bad. Anyway, then the Helryx thing happened, and everybody was like complaining about how everybody was voting. So many people were voting for a meme, and that was until TTV decided to do some things about it. They decided to make the vote who voted for what public, and how many votes each thing had at a time public, which is a big mistake, because then that influences votes in ways as like this. You see, instead of voting for your favorite entry, you vote for the entry that has the most votes besides Helryx. So it like affects the votes in weird ways, and it makes people vote for entries that are not their favorite. If you show how many votes each thing has, right? So it's not something you should do, but that's what they did. Attempt to curve this, and that didn't work. And I wouldn't ever try to curve it. It's like, if that's what the Bionicle fandom wants, if they want this thing that kind of looks like a joke, if that's what they vote for, well, it's a vote. That's what they voted for. I'm not a fan of it. I didn't really like the mock, but I didn't really get the joke. But if Bionicle community does get the joke and they like it, then that's how it is. It's a vote. I mean, who am I to decide? I'm only one person. Given that there was some people who think that they were someone to decide. I don't. But then afterwards, TTV decided we're going to do ex post facto rules, and decide we're going to somehow vet the votes, whatever that means. So kind of make a judgment as to some of the votes being cast were legitimate and some were not. And what exactly constituted a legitimate vote, no one really knows. They were very opaque about that. Envy made this statement that I kind of latched on to last episode about, well, they had to have been someone who could reasonably believe was part of the Bionicle community. What does that mean? What's the line between Bionicle community and not Bionicle community? And I never imagined I'd ever make a vote like that. I would just assume that anybody who voted could vote. Right? The only thing that I would think would make a vote illegitimate is if one person cast multiple votes. And then it was very unclear whether or not they had criteria that they could use in order to determine whether or not someone met this requirement that they were part of the Bionicle community. Which I guess if you're a second vote of the same person, that means you're not part of the Bionicle community because you're nobody. So, and they're very opaque about that too. I presume it just has what their forum software gives them, and what their JavaScript and CSS and HTML gives them, and their PHP, which is just the IP addresses of their members, their web activity, so where they're pinging from and how many pages they're pinging at what rate and when, which basically gives you information like how long they've looked at a page and so on, how many pages they've looked at, and what the user provided information is, such as, email address. And that's all really you have. And I wouldn't know why that kind of material would be sufficient in order to tell if somebody is quote-unquote part of the Bionicle community or not. And there are, of course, people making posts. I never actually read these posts, making posts on Twitter bribing people to vote certain ways in this contest. And I'm like, well, that's just how the cookie crumbles. If people want to campaign that hard, it's nothing wrong to campaign in a contest. That's just how it goes. Nothing wrong with campaigning. So, if I were doing this, I'd be like, well, kind of sucks, but, if you get the most votes, you get the most votes. Whatever reason why people voted for it, if it got the most votes, it gets the most votes. And that would have been the one that won, and we probably wouldn't have any more canon contests after that ever again. Because I'm not a fan of criteria that are not very well defined, and trying to decide if someone meets that criteria based on information that's not sufficient to determine that. And so you're doing some induction, trying to see if someone reaches an ill-defined criteria. It's kind of a matter of opinion what it is. And I'm not a fan of pre-screening things, and so I'm just not a fan of a lot of this stuff. That being said, I do like to watch TTV. Sometimes they're very entertaining. So, it's not. I don't dislike them, but they can be kind of bureaucratic sometimes, and excessively defensive sometimes. Excessively defensive and bureaucratic. Art Farts episode 1 was extremely funny, and I watched it multiple times. It's going to be another rant about my favorite TTV videos. The series, of course, continued a few episodes in, and then it got canceled prematurely because the creator was kind of too lazy to keep doing it. And it wasn't as funny in the later ones, but that particular one video, it is kind of an in-joke video. So, if you don't really know anything about TTV before watching that video, it isn't as funny. But it was funny. And Jonathan Wan, when he was part of that, was indeed quite funny. Given he wasn't a very good representative of Christ in his actions, he was funny. I'll give him that. Some people just won't give him anything. To remember how to get around this corner, which, yeah, I don't remember how. Now next time I get that key and open the door, I gotta check and see which of the square, which of my cursor come around here, which of these squares you actually want to go down to the next room in, because there's actually a trap there. It's kind of a troll trap. Going back to the whole large tone hole thing, if you really want to make it so you don't have to worry about, you know, pads misaligning and leaks, just make open finger holes. It might scare the kids, but definitely makes the instrument much more mechanically reliable if it doesn't have mechanics. So the bassoon has open finger holes, which are kind of a severe disadvantage of it in its current design, because it's an instrument that is, in general, probably too large to have open finger holes, and it be of anything close to acoustically ideal. However, that does reduce the amount of keys and pads, which helps reduce the amount of key noise, the amount of leaks you get from leaky pads. So, you know, it does increase the there's still a whole lot of keys, but because it decreases the necessity for some of the keys and some of the pads, increases the mechanical reliability of the instrument somewhat. So you can make like a T-chart about open finger holes and pads. So, advantages of pads. You now have the capability of making tone holes ideally sized and located. Whereas if you have open finger holes, now they have to be somewhere that's reachable by human fingers, which limits where you can size them and locate them for optimum intonation, power, and evenness of timbre from note to note. Also, pads allow you to define a pad clearance. So if you don't understand what pad clearance is, it's how far the pad sits above the tone hole when it's not being pressed into the tone hole. And on instruments like a saxophone, the pad clearance actually affects the intonation quite a bit, because how far the pad sits above the tone hole is pretty small compared to the size of the tone hole. So it shades it a little bit, and it lowers the pitch. So if your pad clearance becomes too high, you actually go sharp. If it becomes too low, you go flat. If you have an open finger hole, and you can define mechanically the pad clearance if you have pads. If you have open finger holes, then the clearance now is determined by how high your finger is above the tone hole, which isn't you can't really define mechanically. So you have this. Usually, I think a bassoon, the bassoon's acoustical design is ancient. It is never ever thought about, but just like however we did it before, we just keep doing it. It's actually, the pad clearance is designed to be infinity. You just clear the tone holes. So if you do like me, like sometimes I try to play really quickly and try to get an advantage by just moving your fingers a little bit, just barely opening the tone holes, you play out of tune, because ideal pad clearance is infinite, essentially. So, not very well definable pad clearance. And the third advantage is you can actually control where the finger scum goes, or like the damage to the finish or surfaces of the instrument due to the fingers. Right? If you have a saxophone, for example, you can put those pearls, which are often plastic, on the keys, so that you don't touch your fingers on the metal lacquer or on the finish of a wood surface or something like that. Bassoon, however, you put your fingers directly on the bore, and so you can get like your finger scum in the tone holes, and you have to clean them out, and you can over the years, like start rubbing off the finish on your bassoon where the tone holes are. And for some reason, they don't ever like install a shield around the tone hole for your fingers on bassoons, except for the finger holes with rings around them. So I don't know why they don't. It's a good idea. Might dampen things a little bit, but minorly. Might just make it like not a very dampening material. It's like a rubber, like an ABS shield or something, like a hard rubber shield. They don't really put hard rubber shields in there. I forgot to look. To help protect the bore, well, the outside of the bore, that is, the outside of the segments. And so you're going to get finger scum. You're going to eventually wear the finish off your bassoon. So those are the advantages of having keys as opposed to open finger holes. The advantages of having opening finger holes is you don't have to deal with leaky keys or leaky pads, replacing them. That's annoying. And time consuming, and can cost money if you don't know how to do it, which I would not dare do it on my bassoon because it's so valuable and it's made of wood. I'd be afraid I'd scorch it with my torch. I'll do it on a saxophone because I don't have to worry about scorching the saxophone with the torch. The worst thing you have to worry about is melting the key pearls. I mean, they're plastic and not actually pearl. Melting the cheap key pearls. I'm afraid I'd scorch my bassoon if I tried to change the pads on it. So to deal with leaky pads, you also have key noise from the motion of the key. Also, the speed at which you can change the... another advantage of open finger holes. You can do things like finger vibrato and glissandos with the finger hole clearance. Like you can do like the beginning of Rhapsody in Blue on a clarinet with open finger holes. That's actually a really big one. Because imagine trying to do that on a saxophone. Some people who are real... I knew someone in high school, and it wasn't actually the best saxophone player there, but he had a skill for glissing on his saxophone. But it's tricky because you have to suddenly jump your embouchure when you jump notes because it's hard to... You can't use your finger as effectively. So anyway, you get some extra extended techniques with open finger holes. Okay, so going back to the disadvantages of pads. That's another disadvantage of pads, I guess. I guess I wasn't that far off topic. Besides, so leakiness and key noise, you can also have your speed actually limited by the pad. So you do have a clearance issue with speed with finger holes, but with pads, the rebound speed is limited by the spring rebound rate. So you can't actually trill arbitrarily fast. You can only trill as fast as the spring rebound rate is. Now, my saxophone is very nice and it has blue steel needle springs, and there's no way in the world I'd ever be able to trill faster than the springs can move. So it's not a problem for me, but maybe somebody could complain about that. Maybe on the less main keys where you still have those copper strip or cast iron strip or stainless steel strip springs, that is still a problem. I do have stainless steel springs on my bassoon though, so they might limit me. I don't know. I'm not that good at trills. For some reason, that's the thing with saxophones. Like the saxophone customer base is more snobby about their springs. Because, saxophones tend to come with blue steel springs. Maybe it's a gimmick, but that's all the best saxophones in the world have blue steel needle springs in them. Whereas even a Heckel Mielstein bassoon does not have blue steel springs. They all have stainless steel springs. They haven't caught the blue steel bug. Given the intended lifespan of a bassoon is much longer than a saxophone, so maybe stainless steel springs last longer, and that's why. Okay, I think I cleaned everything up from the previous episode. I need to figure out some more tree charts to make. Really, though, the only things I'm really into that I'm not going to talk about here because I haven't done that stuff on YouTube is like math, computers, Lego, and mechanically complex instruments. That's about it. Oh, and lifting weights. And backpacking. I used to say mountain biking, but I'm not that serious about it. I'm not like what you think when you think of a mountain biker. I don't go crashing downhill, weaving between trees. I'm a casual and tame mountain biker. I guess you could say. Hopefully I have my YouTube subscriptions public. Because I subscribe to a few people. I unfortunately haven't subscribed to anybody that's subscribed to me, just because I'm not really interested in watching it. But if you did subscribe to me, thank you for doing so. It's just, the reason why I haven't subscribed back, I haven't like re-scratched your back, is just because nothing really stood out to me as something I really wanted to watch. Voinui Online Game Chat Part 8 has still got excessive amount of views, and I still have no idea where they're coming from. Still a weird mystery. And it obviously didn't blow up. It didn't get millions. It only got like 30. But it's still weirdly unusual. And it's not the YouTube algorithm, as I said. It's some external piping in of views, which makes it funkier. More, like, mysterious. Like, who linked it, and why did they link it for? There isn't even a specific segment of the video that's hot for watch time. So, I mean, I didn't put a spam bot out there linking my video, so. I also say that I'll never, ever delete comments on my videos. That are made by a real person, that is. Because I'm someone who tries to practice the principle of, I may not like what you say, but I'll defend to the death your right to say it. Even if you say you hate me. Like, you can say it if you want to. Even if it's my YouTube channel, right? If you want to say it, you should be able to say it. Now, YouTube may block it, but that's their own prerogative. I won't. So the only comments I've ever deleted were one that I made myself. And that's my own comments, so, you know, I can not say whatever I not want to say. And comments made by, that it seemed extremely obvious that they weren't actually made by a human. They were made by a bot. So I've gotten rid of bot comments. But they're very obviously bot comments, so whatever. Because my comment rate is so extremely low, though, right now, I tend to, like, respond to comments very, like, readily and frequently. I don't respond to all of them, because I don't respond unless there's something I can say, right? Like, if there's nothing to say, then I might just heart the comment or something and not actually respond. I think there is some comments out there where I didn't respond or heart, but they weren't bad. I haven't got any bad comments yet, anyway. So, you know, whatever. They will come, though, and that will be fun. It's inevitable. For some reason I can't do that feed. So this one I go this way. Yeah, they're both symmetric. Okay, so I want to go to the outside. So I want to enter to the outside like this. So, to the outside. Okay, that worked. Oops. Okay, then maybe I'll get this done today then. This room is a lot easier than I'm making it look. This is an easy room. So, I'm making it look hard. That's just me. It's easy. Actually, this whole game is pretty easy, and I'm pretty much making it look hard. I know it's called the world's hardest game. It's not actually that hard, though. As everyone knows, it's just the title. My poor performance, though, is sure making it look like it's hard. Or maybe just making it look like I have poor performance. Man, it's insta-death if you do that. Okay, so it's the third one from the left. So, this is where you want to go down in there. Okay. Of course, I don't want to go down in there yet. What I want to do is I want to checkpoint in this room back where I started, and then go from the checkpoint in there. Because it's much easier to do that than to get the key and then go to the checkpoint in the next room. So, yeah, just to test the theory. And I actually am pretty sure it's easier to do this going across the bottom than it is to go back over the top. You might be thinking, why doesn't he go back to the very start checkpoint? It's easier to do it across the bottom. If you do it right, that is. There we go. Okay. I guess the answer there was just don't stop to think, just go through it. Get in the groove and keep going. Okay, go down this space. Now we'll try to get to that checkpoint down there, which is going to take me a few tries. this room is not that hard, but it's a bit hard. Ugh. Okay, one room down. Now I'll do a couple minutes on the second room and probably in recording suddenly, but we'll do a little bit of this. Just try to go up there and get those two. Oh well. There. Easy ones. Probably should go for that upper corner first, though. Or I will have to come back to this room later, so I might just leave a couple for when I do that. We also theoretically use the checkpoint in the upper room to get those these high corner ones too. Struggle getting high enough there. Okay, I want to go that way. Yep. Okay, you don't want to duck too low. The question is, should I go on this way, or should I continue collecting these yellow circles, or should I just end the recording? And I'll probably just end the recording, so I'm just going to stop recording here. If you watched this, thank you for watching it.